Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where the gnomes live. This is Sharon Oyella, and this is part 2 of transforming a plastic garbage can into this wonderful tree stump with a face. In this video we're going to be painting the tree stump. We're also going to be baking some mushrooms. If you missed part 1, it should be popping up on your screen. You can also find the link to part 1 in the pinned comment below. And I think it's important to note before we get started, guys, that this is a one-off project for me. I've never tried these colors before, so this is all new. And when I started this, I had a totally different color in mind altogether. And then halfway through, I didn't like it and I had to backtrack. But I left it all in the video so you can see how I got to this result here. But the colors that I normally choose are the brownish tones. And I'll mention that in the video as well, and I do say I'd link to it, so that link will be in the pinned comment below, and where I show how I get that technique there. It's really easy, it's just 3 colors. So to recap all the colors that I used for this guy here, I used black, burnt umber, cinnamon brown. I didn't have the proper gray, so I mixed a light gray with some black. And then for the highlights, I used white, cream color, and a little bit of red. We can go ahead and paint this guy. Now for all my trees, I always do a black wash. And a black wash is just basic acrylic black paint, and I do 50-50 water. So the black wash is not necessary at all. If you don't like it, you can skip that step. It's just something that I've done for years, and I'll continue to do. But not everybody likes that, right? We're not all the same, and you can choose whatever colors that you want to choose. And the reason why I water down the paint as much as I do, it just makes it easier to get into all the cracks and crevices. Even though it's watered down as much as it is, you'll still notice that there'll be some crevices that you didn't get into. So you can use a smaller brush for that. Alright, with 2 fans going, that took about 30-35 minutes to dry. And now I'm going to put on cinnamon brown. And this is the first time I'm going to try color like this, like I'm going for a lighter color. So I'm just going to do cinnamon brown on the surface. I'm not going to get into all the little nooks and crannies. Alright, now we're going to add some beige. It's safe to say the color didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, so I'm going to use my burnt umber, and I'll just bring it back to like a brownish color. Basically just kind of starting all over again here. I really wanted this color here, and I think I'm going to get it. I'm in the middle of trying anyway. So we got some gray. So I was looking in my stash of paint and I couldn't find any dark gray. So I got granite gray and black, and I'm mixing them up together to get a darker gray. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of black there. We'll just mix it up, and I was just using my paintbrush to mix it. Yeah, it was too much black. That looks good right there. So I think if I would have went right over the black, it would have turned out really good right away. But trial and error, we'll get there. And if you really like the brown look, like the brown color that I have on my other trees, then I will link the tutorial I have on painting those in the pinned comment below. Alright, so I'm going to set this gray paint aside for a bit. And I want to try some white. I'm going to use my feather brush. Okay, and to get the majority of the paint off. I think that's going to do the trick, guys. And if I put too much white on, I can always go over it with the gray or the black. But I think this is going to do the trick. I am actually falling in love with this as I'm doing it. And I know that once it's dry too, it's going to, you know, it won't be as bright. On the back side, I did the black first and then the white and then some more black. So it's kind of like layering. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the white, and the white I'm going to put on a lot less than the black because it's quite the contrast, so we just need a little bit on our tips of our brush and then just lightly pull it over. And again, I'm just going to use the black, create some shadows, a little bit more depth in the cheek area. Alright, so it's been drying under the fan for about an hour or so, and I'm really loving it. It just needs to be softened up a little bit, so I did do the back. I softened up the back a bit, and I did that with cream color. I hope it's coming across in the camera, because in person it's just beautiful. It looks like bark. It's just beautiful. Very, very, very beautiful. And an aged look as well, which I love. Alright, I let it dry for a little bit. I don't really like that color there, so let's stick a little bit more yellow in there. I'm using tacky glue, and I'm going to be putting a little bit of moss here and there, not too much. Okay, and you just want to make sure that you push it in quite firmly into that glue. And if you don't have access to moss, you can use yarn. You can cut it up into really small little bits. I don't know if it's fully picking up on the camera or not, but I did change his eyes last night after I turned off the camera. Just before I went to bed, I decided to change his eyes because I wasn't really happy with how they looked. So the background is just a murky, brownish, grayish color. It's just a bunch of colors that I put together. I didn't want them white, of course. And then the pupil part, I just took a black paint pen and did a bigger circle, because the guy I was using for inspiration, his eyes, you can see, quite a bit bigger. So it all depends on the look you're going for. You can just look up inspirational pictures on Google for sure. Okay, and the other thing I did, here I'll just show you why I did it. If you look at this guy, he's got a little bit of color. You see that? A little bit of color here and there. And I really like that. So I did the same. And I'm going to do the same on the back so you can see how I did that. But you'll notice little pops of color here and there. And that's with a red. A deep red. All of this stuff is just, you know, personal preference. I do like little pops of color. And this is what I'm using. Deep red and the burnt umber. And again, I'm going to use my feather brush. And I'm just going to use it right out of the bottle like this. I'm just going to squeeze it and get some color up near the top. And then I'm just going to add a little bit here and there. So there's a little bit too much red there. So I'm just going to take my burnt umber. Same thing, I'm going to bring the color up. Get the majority off. Okay, and a little bit of black. Pops of color here and there, little bruises on the tree, all add to the character. You can play around with that and play around with the different colors as well. So I do talk about shadowing quite a bit, and if you haven't picked that up in previous clips, I just take the black and I'll just pick a spot, like right here. Watch how it changes the depth of that. Just put a little bit more black in there. See that? And like here. And if you do that here and there around your tree, you'll start to notice it changes the overall look of the tree. It just gives it so much more character. Well, I think that looks fantastic, guys. In person, it looks really good. I hope it's showing up in the video view. All right, my friends, I just want to pop in and recap the highlighting and lowlighting and tell you how important it is to do that technique. Because when I first started painting trees, I would use one solid color and that was it. And it was sad because I would hate the color. When I was done, I'd hate what I was looking at. And I would think, why, there's just no life there. And I would try my hardest, and it was just because I was using one solid color. And once I, a little bit more experience, I started branching out and using different colors, then it becomes a joy, right? And this brush, if you don't have a feather brush, I would get one. I got this at the dollar store, I'm sure. It just does a wonderful job. And you'll notice when I was doing this work, this highlighting and lowlighting, I never cleaned the brush in between the colors. I would just alternate between all of them. So in here you can see there's cream, there's white, there's a little bit of red, some brown, some black. Alright guys, now we're going to add some mushrooms. So first I start off with the shelf mushrooms, and then I decided to add these guys here, and I'm going to do both of them on camera for you. And I would suggest looking online, or if you have a book of mushrooms, I would take a look at them and look at all the different colors that you can use and all the different colors that are in mushrooms. Like these red cap mushrooms, they have some orange and yellow in there as well. And I noticed when I was editing that I did gloss over the fact that I changed colors. So during the filming, I was going to do this color here, and then I changed my mind later. I didn't like it, and I decided to go with a creamy color. But I did keep it all in the video so you could see how I did the edges here. Alright, so let's get started. This is a very simple shelf mushroom. You can Google that and you can see all the different sizes and shapes and colors that they have online that you can use for inspiration. I've just chosen the very simple shape. So I want a flat edge. This is the part that's going to be glued to the tree, this part here, and it's going to sit out like that. And we want that flat edge because we need something to glue onto. So I'm using some leftover foil here, and so I don't waste anything. And depending on the type of foil that you're using, you might have to double up even a bit more. It depends on how it feels to you. Some foil is very thin. Okay, so I got about 4 pieces there. I'm just going to squish that into my tabletop. I just tore off the sides, and I'm going to squish a little bit more, and I'm just shaping as I squish down into the table. And if you wanted to further shape it, we can add a little bit more in the middle there. I would push it on the table, push the other piece down on the table, and then inside. And it's as simple as that, guys. It's just your basic shape with foil. Make sure that you cover all the foil with the tape because you need something for the paper towel to stick to, so you can't have any exposed foil. And now we can cover it with the paper towel. And I have my glue already prepared. Now, depending on the type of glue that you're using, if it's really thick, you'll want to water it down a bit. You don't want thick glue because it'll just be too hard to work with. I found Elmer's school glue is pretty runny. You could use that pretty much straight. Tacky glue would have to be watered down quite a bit. Okay, again, I'm using paper towel. Random sizes are always helpful. And I'm going to use toothpicks and a piece of foam. Now, if you don't have foam, you can also use some foil and just crumple it up so I can set my mushrooms up on it while they dry. So this part is going to be the part that's up, what we're going to be seeing. So I'll worry more about this top part than I will about the underside. So the paper towel is going to give us a paintable surface. It's also going to give us a surface that we can glue onto as well. So you don't want to leave this backside free even though we're not going to see it. You want to get the paper towel on top of that as well so we can add glue there and glue it to our tree. If you have a really hard time as you're laying this down and it keeps pulling up or whatever and you haven't gotten it underneath there yet, just let it dry and then you can come back to it and glue what you need to. So once they're fully dry, you won't be able to manipulate them at all. They get pretty stiff. They are dry to the touch and I can go ahead and paint them, but I'm just going to curl down the very ends here. It just gives it a little bit more of a fatter look, and when you paint on top of anything that's got glue on it, the paint will crack. So the first coat or two will crack, and that's totally normal. But I'm just going to give them all a base coat of the cream color, and then I'm going to be adding a color on top. I think that first coat is dry, and there's a little bit of cracking, but it's not bad. Anyway, I just mixed up some skin tone and a little drop of apricot to get this orangey color here. And I'll just paint the top side. I'll leave the bottom side the cream color. And I think this one coat's going to do it. Alright, they're all dry now, and I'm going to take my feather brush and I'm just adding a bit of a rougher edge here. Okay, and I'm just going to go on the very bottom edge and just pull up. And I'll just do it really quickly across. The final step for these guys is a clear coat, and again that's optional. I use a Varathane. I like the shine that it gives. I do this for all my mushrooms. Alright guys, I'm going to use 3 of these, and you can see the color change there. So I just put some cream over top, and I did it lightly so some of that peach still shines through there. And I roughed up the edges with the burnt umber. Okay, I'm going to use hot glue and tacky glue together. So the hot glue is just going to hold the mushroom in place while the tacky glue dries. So hot glue isn't a permanent glue, because if you're only using hot glue, and if this tree was to sit in the sun someday, the sun would melt the hot glue and the mushroom would just pop off. And it also happens in cold weather as well. A little bit of extra glue because I could see there was a bit of space between the mushroom and the wall of the tree. I'll put a dot of glue, and then I put hot glue in the middle of those. A bit of a gap there. So I'm just going to fill that up with glue, and then I'm going to shove moss down in there. Okay, and that just fills up that gap. Alright, so last minute decision here. I've just decided to throw some mushrooms together, ones with a longer stem, and I'm going to do it with my leftover foil. So I'm just going to stick you on fast forward so you can watch the process, but it's all self-explanatory. It's the same way I made the other mushrooms, except for we're going to have two different pieces that we'll end up taping together. Alright, we got those made. Now I'm just going to wrap everything in the tape. Popping it with an edit because one of my clips has completely corrupted and I have no idea why. That's really frustrating and I apologize for that. But all I did to attach the cap and the stem together was use hot glue. And then later down the line I'm going to add tape to make sure that those stay together, and then we put the paper towel over top of that. Okay? So these are hot glued temporary in place, so I can just kind of rearrange everything. And now I've already decided that this one will go right about here. Yeah, right about there. So I've already hot glued the stem to the cap. And I'll take off that little blob of hot glue there. That's where it was joined to the tree. This is what I mean by hot glue not being permanent, because you can just tear it right off the masking tape. So I'm going to do a separate stack for the cap part because I want them large enough to fit right over the cap in one piece. So I'm going to tear all the edges. And just make sure that I have a piece large enough. Go over the cap and wrap around all sides. Okay? And we're not going to worry too much about the underside, but we do want to make sure that we get tape around that hot glue under there. And I will be putting paper towel around that area because that's where we join them, and we want them to be strong when we're done. So I'll go ahead and tape those right now. And we can double it up just for a little bit of extra cushion on top, make it a little bit more smoother. And remember, whatever you do now will show up after it's dry. Any major wrinkles on top you want to work out. Now I've got so much paper on there, I can actually do the underside at the same time here. So I'll go ahead and do that. The caps are dry to the touch, so I can go ahead and work on the stems now. And I already know that's going to go against the tree, this part here. So I'm going to put that seam towards the tree. Alright guys, my mushrooms are dry, but I was just thinking of adding in a little skirt. So just got a little strip there, and I'm going to bunch it up on the top. So this one, I'm not going to add a skirt. I'm actually going to add a bit of a rougher look at the bottom. And I could have done this earlier when I was first doing the stem, but I sometimes get these afterthoughts. Okay, we'll let those dry again. So I played with the shape a little bit more, but I had to let it dry some. So I sat in front of the fan for about 10 minutes, and then it was stiff enough to work with, and I split some of the bottom parts as well. See how that skirt turned out? It's pretty stiff, and the edges are pretty raw. I'm running my fingernail along them to kind of break them up a bit, and I like the texture of it. So I'll do 2 coats of this cream. I'll let the first one dry, and then I'll do the second one. So I did 2 coats of red on top and 2 coats of the cream on the bottom. I'm just going to rough up the bottom a bit with this burnt umber. So again, I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the shelf mushrooms. Just pull it up from the bottom, pull the brush up from the bottom. And I'm just highlighting all those creases that I made. And for the cap, I'm going to take orange spice. Now I've already done 2 coats of red. I'm going to use my feather brush again. Get off the excess. And I'm going to go around. And over here, I forgot about the orange part, and I started doing my cream colored work there. So we won't worry about that. We'll just go over it with the orange. Okay, I'm trying with another color as well, and this is apricot. So I got orange spice and apricot going here at the same time. Alright, I think I'm happy with that color. So now I'm going to take the cream color and the back end of a brush. I'm not brushing these on, and I'm not dotting these on. I'm going to drag the color across, starting at the bottom, and I'm just going to spiral all the way to the top. I'll do the stem first and let that dry. So he actually turned out pretty cool. I love the color, and yeah, paper towel surface, I think it turned out really well. I could have spent a little bit more time here smoothing this out, the foil underneath, and also I could have made this a little bit thicker as well. But I'm not going to complain. I think it turned out really cool, and I like this one here with the roughed up bottom part too. So hopefully that will give you some ideas. And again, look online at pictures and colors, and you should get a good idea there. Alright, so I'm going to use my hot glue and tacky glue again. And I've found over the years that adding in moss to things like this and tacky glue, that everything is so much stronger when it's dry. I do this a lot on stairs and stuff, like when I'm building twig stairs and things like that, and I put moss in between the twigs or on a twig and the side of a tree. Really strong. So not bad for a bunch of foil, tape, and paper towels, hey? Oh my goodness, I'm so in love with my garbage can. I can't believe I'm saying that in a sentence, but I am. I'm so in love with my garbage can. I can't wait to use him. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so glad I decided to bring you along and do this on film for you. It turned out so much cooler than I thought it was going to turn out, that's for sure. I was really, really happy about this project. And on Facebook, I posted that I was looking for a cool name for him, and if there was any ideas to leave comments. I haven't decided on one yet, so I'll extend that invitation to you as well. If you have any cool names for this guy, I would love to read what you come up with. You can post that in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you super soon.